Kia ora and welcome to this episode of the Amateur Austenite. I'm Frances Duncan, an author and the founder of the Jane Austen Society of New Zealand. My guest today is Raymond.
Hi.
And we are going to discuss Letter 10 of Lady Susan by Jane Austen. What is your experience of Jane Austen?
I read the popular Jane Austens when I was at university. Love, Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, and Emma, of course, the main three, and didn't read much else around that.
And you have actually read Lady Susan?
I have read Lady Susan at Frances's recommendation. Didn't even know she'd written Lady Susan.
So I'm going to read Letter 10. Letter 10, Lady Susan to Mrs. Johnson, Churchill. I am much obliged to you, my dear friend, for your advice regarding Mr. de Courcy, which I know was given with the fullest conviction of its expediency, though I'm not quite determined on following it. I cannot easily resolve on anything so serious as marriage, especially as I am not at present in want of money, and might perhaps till the old gentleman's death be very little benefited by the match. It is true that I am vain enough to believe it within my reach. I have made him sensible of my power, and can now enjoy the pleasure of triumphing over a mind prepared to dislike me, and prejudiced against all my past actions. His sister, too, is, I hope, convinced how little the ungenerous representations of anyone to the disadvantage of another will avail, when opposed to the immediate influence of intellect and manner. I see plainly that she is uneasy at my progress in the good opinion of her brother, and conclude that nothing will be wanting on her part to counteract me. But having once made him doubt the justice of her opinion of me, I think I may defy her. It has been delightful to me to watch his advances towards intimacy, especially to observe his altered manner in consequence of my repressing by the calm dignity of my deportment his insolent approach to direct familiarity. My conduct has been equally guarded from the first, and I never behaved less like a coquette in the whole course of my life, though perhaps my desire of dominion was never more decided. I have subdued him entirely by sentiment and serious conversation, and made him, I may venture to say, half in love with me, without the semblance of the most commonplace flirtation. Mrs. Vernon's consciousness of deserving every sort of revenge that it can be in my power to inflict for her ill offices could alone enable her to perceive that I am actuated by any design and behaviour so gentle and unpretending. Let her think and act as she chooses, however. I have never yet found that the advice of a sister could prevent a young man's being in love if he chose it. We are advancing now towards some kind of confidence, and in short, are likely to be engaged in a kind of platonic friendship. On my side, you may be sure of its never being more, for if I were not already as much attached to another person as I can be to anyone, I should make a point of not bestowing my affection on a man who had dared to think so meanly of me. Reginald has a good figure, and is not unworthy the praise you have heard given him, but is still greatly inferior to our friend at Langford. He is less polished, less insinuating than Mannering, and is comparatively deficient in the power of saying those delightful things which put one in good humour with oneself and all the world. He is quite agreeable enough, however, to afford me amusement, and to make many of those hours pass very pleasantly, which would be otherwise spent in endeavouring to overcome my sister-in-law's reserve and listen to her husband's insipid talk. Your account of Sir James is most satisfactory, and I mean to give Miss Frederica a hint of my intentions very soon. Yours, etc., S. Vernon.
They didn't call him Mannering.
Oh, apparently it's supposed to be Mannering.
So he was there. So that's where she fell in love with, and she had to leave because this is her main interest with him, isn't it? He's the one she really likes.
Well, she says so, but you notice that she says, as much attached to another person as I can be to anyone. She says she's in love with him, but I'm not sure that's actually a thing.
Well, he's the one he's most attached to. I do like that. Maybe she's not in love with him. Maybe she's not that insipid, but she's more attached to him than old Reginald.
Lady Susan gets him in her clutches.
Absolutely. And I love that. Partly it's to, because she needs to be there because can't be here anymore. So she needs to be there. She's this bad time of year. She's had to leave for all these reasons. None of them like her.
Mr. Vernon might like her.
Really?
Yeah.
Mrs. does not.
No. The line that I stumbled on when I was reading it, I have made him sensible of my power and can now enjoy the pleasure of triumphing over a mind prepared to dislike me and prejudiced against all my past actions. So there's another letter where it says, I literally have this on a piece of jewellery that I'm wearing, It's in letter 7. There is exquisite pleasure in subduing an insolent spirit and making a person predetermined to dislike acknowledge one's superiority, which is very Lady Susan. I stumbled because it was kind of similar, but I love her power plays.
Oh my goodness, her power plays are awesome.
And she's very about that power over people. Well, she's actually quite powerless.
That makes sense.
Because she has a title, she's Lady Susan, but she has no money of her own, no estate of her own, and not having a husband. Widows had more power than an unmarried woman, but still men would have more power than her. We could see her behaviour throughout the novel as a primal woman's cry of, no, I get to choose my fate. I get to be in charge of my life. Or she's a sociopath.
Isn't it interesting those are our two options? Because don't you ever think, like as a woman, like there are some certain things, if people irritate the heck out of me, you sort of think, well, I want you to change your mind. I want you to admit you're wrong. It's just a thing about being right. Is that about being powerful or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it I know this. I know I'm right. But that actually feels more moral than what Lady Susan's doing. Like trying to teach someone and help them grow. Whereas she's just like, how dare you come up to me all flirtatious? No, I will teach you how to treat me like a lady.
Yeah, that's power, but that's personal power. You take the power where you can, I suppose. But there's a difference between when I first started listening to this, because I listened to it as an audiobook. The way the audiobook was read too really didn't read her in a very good light. It was very much twisted, like she was quite obnoxious. But when you think about what she's trying to do, if someone's going to say, I'm going to come and treat you like a flirt, there is power in being able to say, you'll treat me like a human being. But is there no thought to the end of it? Like, if I'm going to get you to treat me like a human being, then treat me with respect. Am I also going to take that a bit further and make you fall in love with me and play that power game so that you actually do what I want to in other areas?
When it comes to that stuff, yes, you can see both sides of the argument. But when you come to her treatment of her daughter,
oh, yeah.
We can't explain that away.
No. Oh, gosh, didn't like her treatment of her daughter at all.
No. In this letter, Lady Susan acknowledges Mrs. Johnson's advice. And it sounds like she might follow it. I'm not quite determined. I could do it, but at the moment, I don't need money, so why would I marry him? His father's still alive, so technically, his father's still carrying the money. Well, he's got the purse string, so
it'd still be under him to some extent.
Yeah. I would be very little benefited by the match.
You have to be quite pragmatic, I imagine, as a woman in those days.
I think women should continue to be pragmatic about choices in relationships in all parts of life.
This is true, but I think now you've got more options to be able to get out of it, or more scope to actually take the reins into your own hands.
You say that, but say you're marrying an abusive narcissist, they're very good at covering who they are until you're too deep into the marriage, and then you can't see a way out, and then you're stuck in a relationship with an abusive partner.
Yes, that's definitely an option. And coercive control and those sort of things, which is definitely an issue. And that's still a very real factor for now. So yes, if you're talking about coercive control and abusive relationships, that's probably equally as around then as it is now. However, then there were absolutely no way of getting out. There was no understanding of it. No. So once you were tied into marriage, that was it. You didn't get the choice of divorcing easily, or you had to just wait for someone to die, or just hope they didn't cast you aside.
Waiting for people to die thing bothers me, because you get that through a lot of Austen novels. There's a sort of background, but what about when so-and-so dies and then we can get their money?
There's still a lot of that around these days, though. I've heard that happen before.
I can't imagine. I would be devastated if my parents die. I would financially benefit, but be devastated. Would I rather have that money or have my parents? I would rather have my parents.
Absolutely. But then there was that whole pragmatism thing, like, once someone married and you used to be the lady of your own house, and now all of a sudden the wife has come in and you're now sent off to the dowager's house, and there were certain roles that were around in those times that are quite different from now, and they occur in different cultures as well. It's not just the English culture, different ways they work. And I think that's maybe it. As a woman in particular, you usually get the lesser beneficial of those roles.
Because your role is always dependent on the role of your husband in these periods.
Absolutely, and what his income is, and then what bequest can be made to you.
Because it might all be tied up in the estate and have to go to whoever the estate is entailed to, if the estate is entailed. But generally, most estates had to go down the male line. There was this concept called a jointure.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant that the widow would have a certain amount of the income from the estate until her death, and then it would revert back to the state.
That would be assuming the estate had enough wealth to do that.
Yeah.
Because so many of these estates, it was so much more than just a family or just a relationship. It was all the unmarried daughters, and it was the clergies that were signed up, the people that were off, they were buying people in this military. When they were going off into the army, you could buy them their officer's title, commission.
An estate, a household, was like a small business. You had capital, you had income, you had employees, you had products. Often you'd have full gardens to provide food for the house, people tending those gardens. You'd have servants cleaning the house and tending you, and it all needed to work together really well. And you needed to be managing the business. The husband would manage the estate matters, and the wife would manage the house. And managing a house was a big deal. You had to have an army of servants because there were none of the modern conveniences. There was no electricity, no running water. Everything had to be cooked and prepared by hand. Everything had to be cleaned by hand. And these houses were not small. And as you say, you could have unmarried women from other parts of the family who did not have their own income, so they lived with you so you could support them. That was one of the roles of family, to make sure that unmarried females in particular were supported. And men, it would be, yes, potentially supporting them to get a commission in the army, helping them find a position in the clergy, those sort of things, because you couldn't just go out and work if you were a certain rank.
And which made it very vulnerable for those women sitting in that. So all you really have is the opportunity to be able to marry, or hope that the people who are looking after the estate, manage it well so you can be kept there for the rest of your life. Or whether you get like some of the other characters in other books that we've looked at, whether you become like the old, what's that woman? That terrible one.
Miss Bates. No?
The one in Mansfield Park.
Mrs. Norris.
Mrs. Norris. She was so painful. She was such a drain on the family, but she had claws in there, because if she wasn't useful, what on earth was she going to be? She was the least useful person in the world, really. But
you consider Pride and Prejudice, right? There's 5 daughters to be married off, and they've only got like $5,000 of dowry between them. That's only $1,000 each. It's nothing.
Yeah. And if you don't get married off and you end up being an old spinster aunt, then what happens when a few generations down you're further and further out from the centre of the family? It just seems there's a lot of vulnerability in there. So if we're totally gone off the subject of Lady Susan,
it's nice to see a woman take her power, especially during this time period where women's power was so, it could easily slip through their fingers. She's lucky she's still attractive at 35, that she looks 25, that she maintains her power. And there's something empowering about reading it. Even though she's a horrible person, it's empowering to read a woman go, you know what, I'm going to do life my way.
Well, she's not just powerful in that sense, she's resilient. You know, she's managed to get herself pretty much booted out of Langford, and in the middle of winter when the snow is on the road and all this kind of stuff. And she's taken herself with quite a lot of, kind of forced herself this invitation to go and stay somewhere for as long as suits her, to a place where they don't want her, where they're practically hostile. And she's going to go and make the best of it because she needs to get on in the world. And I think that's what I like about her. I intensely dislike how she treats her daughter. But her own way is like, I need to get on and I'm going to figure out the best way for me. Really grateful we don't live in that time now.
The way that she seduces Reggie, entirely by sentiment and serious conversation, her influence of intellect and manner. I'm not being flirtatious. I'm just using my brain, having regular conversations with him, and you know what? Still working.
Do you think he had heard of her and he was ready to see this flirtatious woman who was going to... And the fact that she wasn't behaving like that was even more intriguing to him.
Oh, that's a good point. Because then you would question. You would go, is everything I've heard wrong? Mm-hmm. Because she's not behaving the way I thought she would.
Mm. Which is really different than you often see. Usually you see people saying the one thing about themselves and then behaving completely different. Whereas this, she's not behaving like a coquette at all. And all the things she's known for being, she's actually playing it straight. But she's doing it to a purpose, which I love.
It's a challenge for her.
Yeah.
Without the semblance of the most commonplace flirtation, she can revenge herself on Mrs. Vernon.
Nothing quite like painting someone in a bad light only to see them behave like an angel. And you know full well they're not.
And everybody falls under the spell. You're like, no, don't, no. Yeah. I have never yet found that the advice of a sister could prevent a young man's being in love if he chose it.
That is one of my most favourite lines. And it's a real thing that it comes through with Austen as well. It's like these people trying to intervene and how impossible it is to intervene with these people who are dead set on what they believe their object of affection is until they come a cropper.
Well, does she like Reggie? He has a good figure.
Mm-hmm.
He's not unworthy of the praise you've heard about him. But he's not as good as Mannering. He's less polished, less insinuating, and he doesn't say lovely things to me about how wonderful I am that I need to hear.
Because I'm not being coquettish right now.
He is quite agreeable enough to afford me amusement. And, pass the time.
Well, he's there, isn't he? Mannering isn't. Have you ever met people like that who'll flirt with someone because no one better comes along? I'm a great watcher of like The Bachelor and The Bachelor in Paradise. They're in and they're in love until seconds later someone else walks on the beach or someone says the littlest thing that could be misinterpreted and then they're out of love and it's like, you've thrown my love away, and it's like, do you know what love is? Like it's
very teenage.
Like, yeah, and I feel a little bit like this is, well, what else has she got to do? She's not being coquettish, so she's being, what did they say, reasonable and
dignified? Calm dignity of my deportment.
She's just playing her own little game. Maybe you can enlighten me. With these characters, what else do they have to do?
Again, Mrs. Vernon's running the house.
Yeah.
Reggie's an elder son, so he should be helping his dad run the estate. In fact, if his dad's not well, so he should be kind of running the estate, but he's on holiday, gone to visit his sister. They've got nothing to do.
So the two of them really, and because Mrs. Vernon, she's off running the estate, she doesn't like Lady Susan anyway. Well, what else is there to do but to play nice with the not bad looking...
Well, that's what she says, right? He will afford me amusement. Make many of these hours pass very pleasantly. Which otherwise I'd have to endure listening to my sister-in-law, her stupid husband.
Well, it's human nature. Which would you rather do?
Yes, I'm going to flirt with the hot young man.
She's not even flirting. She's just toying.
She does mention Sir James because Mrs. Johnson has said, I'm keeping him in line for you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Vernon's happy to hear this and goes into, I'm going to make my daughter know. Still intend her to marry him. She might be at school now. When she gets out of school, gonna marry him.
Okay, I never can figure out why she wants her daughter to marry Sir James. Why?
I think it's twofold. Get Frederica off her hands so she never has to worry about feeding her and housing her. Because that's an added expense she doesn't need.
I never thought of that.
And two, Sir James is very biddable and rich.
Ah.
So she'd have a money pot that she has access to easily, and as the mother-in-law, she'd still have influence over him. And gets rid of her daughter. Like, it's a win-win, except that for Frederica.
Surely she could just get rid of her daughter elsewhere, farm her off to some other family.
The way everyone talks about Frederica in this book thus far is not good. Mr. Smith tells Reggie she's dull and proud.
And where have they heard that from?
That's what Mr. Smith says about her, having met her, presumably, at Langford. But Mrs. Vernon the whole time is saying, I'm glad that Frederica's not coming with her mother. One, because surely it's got to be better for her to not be with her mother. But two, I don't want her in my house. She's completely uneducated.
Yeah.
She might be like her mother.
True.
Why would I want her?
And she's been sent off to boarding school.
Yeah.
She's going to keep him on the boil, get Sir James. She's not interested in Sir James himself because he's not her attractive equal.
Yeah, well, she says earlier, were he 1 degree less contemptibly weak, I might marry him. But because he is so biddable...
She could take advantage of that through Frederica.
And if she married him, like, where would be the fun?
The fun. And then she's... I mean, this is the thing, even when you're married to an advantage, you're still around those people all the time.
Yeah. Although during this time period, they did, produce heirs, and then they'd often live separate lives.
True.
They might have several different houses. So they might have a house each, or one person live in town and one person live on the estate, because marriages weren't necessarily for love, because they're business deals.
I guess I hadn't put that together because I thought, well, he seemed like if he was well off, he'd be a relatively good option for Frederica from the money point of view. And I didn't think she cared that much for her. I thought she just wanted her out full stop. But I guess it makes more sense if it would give her extra money to call upon should she need it.
The only advantage to her by getting Frederica married off is Frederica's off her hands.
Mm-hmm.
And her whole modus operandi is, what's in it for me?
I think the thing I like about this particular chapter is it kind of just shows how intentional she is about what she's going about. She's not just having fun and letting the days fly by. She is considering what her outcomes and her objectives are for this. Got to fill in my time, got nothing better to do than to not be coquettish with this man, but make him change his opinion of me. It's that whole feeling of, I'll show them I've still got that ability to be who I am, and there's a reason why I'm Lady Susan. And at 35, people still love me. I like that she's been very intentional about it, and she's not tying her heart to some romantic notion, is that I quite like about her. And I think that sort of sets up for the rest of the story. What are her intentions going forward? Yeah, I do like that about her. I guess she's interesting to me and that she's wholly unapologetic. And there's a few times where she, is not taking other people's advice. She's going to consider the advice and think about whether she'll take it or not and do her own thing. I'm very pleasantly surprised with having read this one, she's having heard about it before.
Very modern woman, I think.
She is. Not necessarily likeable, but interesting.
And that's our summary of Letter 10 of Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I'm Frances Duncan. All the links to my socials will be in the notes. Thank you for listening, and we wish you happy reading.